Got to get on this week's newsletter. There you go. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today's daf is Ayin Vav. We are going to pick up on the bottom of Ayin Ham and Beis. We got until the Gemara. Just a quick review of the Mishnah. Mishnah brought down a machlokas. If you have an asham and a shlamim that get mixed together, Rabbi Shimon says that you bring both of the karbanos and you bring it with the chumras of each. So you have to bring them both in the north, and they're limited in their eating time. And the Rabbanan argued on that and said we don't do that because we don't want to take the less stringent carbon and apply additional stringencies to it, because we're worried about the principle of ein mivin kad shem leveis absul. By limiting the time or certain other aspects of the carbon, you're potentially bringing that carbon to be disqualified if, again, you miss the time of eating or it's not brought in the proper place. And so the Rabbanan say we don't, instead of taking the chumras of both, we just have both the karbanos graze until they get a mum, and then we redeem them that way. So the Gemara is going to discuss this concept of how do we apply this concept of, or how widely does Rabbi Shimon not apply his concept that he's not worried about bringing karbanos, limiting their time frame, and potentially bringing karbanos to a psul. So pick up in the Gemara. Tani Tana Kame de Rav. So they brought a brisa in front of Rav and said, Shvius, if you have peros shvius, ein lochim bedameha truma, so if you have peros shvius, you redeem them onto coins, you can't go and take that money and buy truma. Why? Because when you redeem the shvius onto the money now has kedusha shvius. If you go ahead and you buy truma, you are going to be limiting the ability to eat that truma. Why? Because shvius, if you look in Rashi, the Rashi 2 lines from the bottom, why? So because shvius, the time for eating shvius is limited, you can only eat the produce of shmita when that particular min is still available out in the fields. And so when you now infuse this truma that you're buying with the kedusha of shvius, this truma has to be eaten by that certain time. While truma, Rashi continues, truma, when it's not truma it's not from the Shemitah year, there's no truma in the Shemitah year, so there's no limiting factor. Truma can technically, as long as it lasts, can be eaten forever. And so if we go ahead and we purchased truma with this shvius money, what we're doing is limiting the ability to eat that truma and potentially bringing that truma lidei psul, that if it goes past the time, that truma now needs to be destroyed. So that's the brisa. So Amruha, back in the Gemara. So Amruha Rabbanan Kame to Rava. So it said this in front of Rava, and he said, Lo Rabbi Shimon. This brisa must not be like Rabbi Shimon from our Mishnah. Why? Rabbi Shimon Amar maybe in Kajin lebeis absul. Because Rabbi Shimon did not have an issue with this. Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah said that if the two karbanos can mix together, we can go ahead and offer them with the chumras of each, and therefore limiting the time for eating of one of the karbanos, and Rabbi Shimon did not have a problem with it. So Amar Lahu, so Rava said back to them, now Afilu Tema Rabbi Shimon, this brisa could still follow the opinion of Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah. Hani mila di'eved lechatchila lo, because perhaps when Rabbi Shimon said his position in the Mishnah, that was only b'di'eved, meaning the karbanos were already mixed together, and then we're figuring out what we can do with them. But this case of shvius, of shmita money, is a case of lechatchila. We're actively going ahead and taking the money that has kedusha shvius and going ahead and purchasing truma, and therefore actively limiting the time to eat the truma. It's not a case where the mixture has already happened. So maybe Rabbi Shimon's position only works in a case where the mixture has already taken place, and now you're figuring out what to do, as opposed to actively going lechatchila and limiting the time for eating the kachim. So no proof from there. So comes along the Gemara and asks, "Ulchatchila lo?" And is it true that Rabbi Shimon only would apply his position that he's not worried about ein meviin kachim lebeis hapsul only in a case of b'diavad and not lechatchila? Eisvei Abai. Abai comes and is going to ask a series of questions where it seems that Rabbi Shimon would apply his principle no matter whether it's b'diavad or lechatchila. So Eisvei Abai, top of Ayin Vav Amud Aleph. V'kulon Rishon Kohanim l'shanos ba'achilason. So this is a mission from later on in the Masechta. It's talking about how the Kohanim eat their various types of kachim, and the Mishnah tells us in all cases Kohanim are allowed to eat these karbanos in different ways, whether lachlan sluyim, whether they want to roast them, shlukin to like overcook them, muvushalim regular cooked, v'laseis l'tochan tavle chulin v'tavle truma. And that's the key for us. They can put on the Kohanim can put on spices that are just regular chulin spices, or even put on truma spices. Divrei Rabbi Shimon. The Geras has changed to Rabbi Shimon. So we see when we're talking about truma spices, what happens if you're adding truma spices onto these kachim? You are effectively limiting the time to eat the truma, just like we had before, right? The truma, the spices that are truma could be eaten for as long as they last. But if you add them to a karban, now you're now limiting the time that you can eat those spices. And it seems here you're putting it on lechatchila. So it seems that Rabbi Shimon is holding his position that he's not worried about limiting the ability to eat the truma, even in a case of lechatchila. So Amar Lei. So Rava says back to Abai, no hanach trumas tavlin derabanan. This you can't bring a proof from here because here we're talking about truma of spices, and spices that would only be truma derabanan because midaraisa truma is limited to grapes, olives, and the 5 grains. So here we're just talking about spices. We're not talking about truma deraisa. So maybe again we wouldn't be worried about this principle of ein meviin kachim lebeis hapsul. We wouldn't be worried about that in a case of truma derabanan, but we may still be, maybe Rabbi Shimon still would be worried about it in a case of truma deraisa. Okay, so Abai comes to another question. Eisive ein lochin truma bekesef meiser mneshemait bachi lasan. So now this case is talking about not mixing, but purchasing truma with the kesef of meiser sheni. And what's the issue there? Rashi is mipnei shememait ba'achilasan b'makom achilasa. Right. The issue is if you use meiser sheni money, whatever you buy with it can only be eaten inside the walls of Yerushalayim, and otherwise truma could be eaten anywhere. So again, you're now limiting, what you can do with that truma, and potentially, if that truma is now moved outside of Yerushalayim, it can't be eaten. And you could again bring it to becoming pasul. So that's Tanakama in this brisa. Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon matir. Rabbi Shimon comes along and is matir. So we see here clearly we have a case of lechatchila. You're taking your money that is infused with meiser sheni, and you're lechatchila going ahead and purchasing truma with it, which then limits the potential of eating the truma because you can now only eat it in Yerushalayim. And we see the Tanakama says that's a problem because he holds like the Rabbanan that ein meviin kachim lidei psul. But Rabbi Shimon comes along and says it's okay. So we see Rabbi Shimon applies his opinion in a case where it is deoraisa and it is lechatchila. So Rabbi Shimon's opinion in the Mishnah is a little bit more far-reaching than we may have thought. And ishtiklei, and so Rava agreed. Rava was quiet, and he accepted Abai's question and agreed that Rabbi Shimon's opinion would apply even in a case of lechatchila. So when Abai then went and was in front of Rav Yosef, Amar lei amai lo tosef mehai. So even though Abai asked a good question on Rava, Rabbi Yosef wants to know, why didn't you ask from a different place? Could have had a couple questions on Rava's opinion. So next case, ein mevashlin yerek shel shvius b'shemen shel truma. So that's how you have a case where you want to cook a vegetable that is a shemitah vegetable, and you want to use oil that is truma oil. And again, what's the issue? Again, what's the issue is if you're taking the truma oil and using it to cook a vegetable that is shvius, so then you're again taking that oil that was otherwise truma, can be eaten for any time period, and now limiting it to being intertwined with the Shemitah, and it can only be eaten for the same time that vegetable is still out in the field. So again, just like we had before, it's a case where you're going ahead and limiting the availability to eat the truma. And Tanakama says you can't do that. Rabbi Shimon Matir, Rabbi Shimon comes along and says it's okay. So again, this could be another question that Abaye could have asked on Rava. So Amar Lei, Abaye says to Rav Yosef, Amar Lei Abaye, V'lav mi osvise meha de tavlin. But didn't I already ask Rava from the case of the spices, of putting truma spice on kachim? And the issue was V'amar li hanach l'trumas tavlin derabanan. And there, my question was pushed aside because Rava said that the truma spices are only truma derabanan. It's not one of the deoraisa truma levels, and that's why there was no, that wasn't a valid question on Rava's opinion. So Hanami, trumas yarak derabanan. Also here, why don't we say the same thing? This oil, this truma oil, must be made from some vegetable that isn't subject to. It's not olive oil, which would be subject to truma daraisa. It's some other type of oil, which is only truma derabanan, and therefore I didn't ask this question because I already was shlogged up when I asked a different question relating to truma that was derabanan. So Rav Yosef says back, ihachi, if that's the case, that we're talking about oil that's not olive oil, but rather some other vegetable oil that's only a derabanan, so ihachi ibcha mibai le'lemisnei. Then this Mishnah should have taught us this case in the opposite way. What's the opposite way? Yerek shel truma, it should have been a case of the vegetable being truma, b'shemen shel shvius, and the oil would be of shvius. Why? Look at Rashi. It's about 7 lines down where it gets thin. It should have said Eidim Mevashlan Yerek shel truma b'shemen shvius. Rabbi Shimon matir, and Rabbi Shimon would be matir in that case, right? Aval hashta shemen truma d'oraisa. Rather, but if it switched it around and specifically said that the shemen is the truma and the yerek is the shvius, it must be that it's because we're talking about truma d'oraisa. Why? Because oil has the possibility of being olive oil, which would be truma d'oraisa, or the vegetable oil, which would be truma d'rabanan. But if it just said the vegetables were of truma and the oil was of shvius, so that we know all vegetables are truma d'rabanan. So if the point was to teach us that would have been the more concise way to teach the brisa, from the fact that we instead said the oil is what is truma and the vegetables are what is shvius. It must be that we're talking about olive oil, which is d'oraisa, and so therefore it would be this could have been a good question on Rava. So Rav Yosef says back. Abaye says back to say why he didn't use this as his line of questioning. So v'lav mi osfise b'masnisen the matir Rabbi Shimon Amar li the arev hachanami the arev. So Abaye says, didn't I also in the question that I asked on the initial question that I asked on Rava, the answer was given was that we're talking about a case where the mixture was already in existence. We're talking about a case of b'diavad. You weren't lechatchila going ahead and mixing it, but instead it was a case where something was already mixed. So why don't we say in this Mishnah of the oil of truma and the vegetable of shvius, that it's already a case where they've been mixed together. So you have the oil is already infused, and you're just going ahead and cooking it afterwards, but you've already encountered a situation where the two are already mixed. So if that's the case, this wouldn't be a good question. So Rav Yosef says back, no, idi arev, my tamai derabanan. If we're talking about a case here where the mixture was already in existence, so why would the Rabbanan have their position, right? In this Mishnah, the Rabbanan said you are not allowed to go ahead and cook it. But if it was a case where they encountered the mixture already in existence, why wouldn't the Rabba? What's the reason behind the Rabbanan's position? Why would they prohibit going ahead and cooking that vegetable that's soaked in the truma oil? The shvi is the vegetable soaked in the truma oil. So what is Rav Yosef answer? No, mi did have a asham shlamim. So no, it's just like the case in our Mishnah, right? We started this whole case in our Mishnah where we had asham and shlamim mixing together, and in that case as well, the Rabbanan said you cannot go ahead and shech them with the chumras of both, but rather you let them graze and get a mum. So the same thing here. You don't. We compare to that case. You already have the mixture in existence. We're not going to let you go ahead and cook it and really infuse those two together and limit the truma. So Abai says back, midami. Hasam is takanta beria. The case we had in the Mishnah, there was another alternative. Rather than shechting the two karbanos and limiting one of them, you could go ahead and let them both graze and then redeem them the other way. There was a second alternative. So the Rabbanan said, because we have another option, we're not going to go ahead and let you limit. Go ahead the principle of ein mevin kachim the beis hapsul. But however, here, less like the kantabriya. In this case, you have the oil and the vegetable mixed together. There's no other alternative to be able to take them apart or to figure out what to do with this mixture. So it comes back Abai and says, no, hello dummy. This is not comparable to the first case of Mishnah where we had a live animal asham and an asham and a shlamim mixed together. But rather, this is comparable to the second case of the Mishnah, which was the chatichos. You had already shechted pieces of meat that were mixed together. So you couldn't go ahead and do anything else with them. The meat is already there and done. And so in that case, they came into less like takanta, the ochel kamashabahed. So there, in that case, the Rabbanan agreed that you can go ahead and you just treat it with the stringencies of both. So in this case, the same thing. When you have the mixture that's already infused, there isn't another option to be able to separate them. So they're here together. So the Rabbanan would say you can go ahead. It would agree to Rabbi Shimon that you can go ahead and cook them together. So Maskif Ravina asked, "Mi dami chaticha shebechatichos lasei takanta kla." The case of the Mishnah, the second case of the Mishnah in the Seifa was those two pieces of meat. There really is nothing else to do. Either they just go to waste, or you eat them with the chumras, with the chumrah of the two of them. But here, islay takanta. In our case of the oil infused, the shemitah vegetable infused with the oil of truma, there is a takana beschita. Why don't we wring out the vegetable and squeeze out all of those oils, and therefore we're taking the mixture apart, basically. And so why don't the Rabbanan say we should do that instead of going ahead and allowing you to cook? So that's the opinion of, that's what Abai says. Rav Yosef, Hechi Nischot. So what does Rav Yosef say to that? He says, no. How exactly would you go ahead and do this pressure squeezing? Nischot Tuva, if you go ahead and you really have to squeeze hard to make sure you get every little bit of the truma oil out from the shemitah vegetable, Kamafse b'shvias. Then we're going to have an issue. You're going to be ruining some of the shvius, because inevitably, when you're crushing the vegetable to get all the oil out, some of it's going to get ruined and dissipate. So you're not going to be able to do that because you have to treat the vegetable of shvius with the proper kedusha. So find nischot purta. So then let's say we'll just do a light squeeze of the oil, and then sof iru v'ma'arev. You're not going to be able to fully get all of the truma oil out unless you do a really hard squeeze. So according to that side, so it's machlokas, I guess, in the Metzias of whether it is possible to properly remove it. But Abai held that you couldn't, and therefore he didn't use this to ask the question on Rava because it was different than the cases that we had brought. Okay, so I guess now after Rav Yosef had come and asked Abai why he didn't have some of these other questions on Rava. There were, I guess, Abai had a couple of different other questions that we could have asked on Rava's Shita, again, to see how far Rabbi Shimon would apply his din, that he's not worried about ein mevin kachim beis hapsul, and he would allow active measures to limit truma or other kachim, as long as there's a mixture, as long as you are satisfying the chumras of what were the two things that are mixed together. So, Eisaveh. Rabbi Shimon Omar. So I asked the following question on Rava's opinion. Rabbi Shimon Omar, and here we're talking about, if you look in Rashi L'macharas, we're talking about Besafek Mitzorah, talking about somebody who, it's a Safek Mitzorah Muchlat, Besafek Eina Muchlat. They had some form of tzaras or some blemish on their skin, and they came to the Kohen, and they were put away for 7 days, and it's a Safek whether they were just set aside for those 7 days, but never actually became a full-fledged Mitzorah, and if therefore they're coming out at the end of their time, they're done, or if they actually were, they actually became a full-fledged Mitzorah, in which case they have to go through the Tahara process. So then now they're sitting on the cusp of the 8th day, which would be when they bring their karbanos. So Rishon Omer L'macharas, back in the Gemara, the last line, L'macharas on the 8th day, Mevi Ashamo Velugo imo. So this person who's a Safek full-fledged Mitzora and a Safek maybe just someone who is locked up as a potential Mitzora and is now getting out. So they have to bring, if they were a full-fledged Mitzora, they would have to bring a Karban Asham and a lug of oil on the 8th day. So now if this 8th day comes, what do? They bring an Asham and the lug of oil, the Omer, and they make it tonight. Say, Imshal Mitzora, if this person actually was a Mitzora, so this Asham is a real Asham Mitzora, Hareza Ashamo, this is a Lugo, then this Karban is the required Asham, and the Lug of Shemen is the required Lug. Antam and Beis, Ayin Vav and Beis. The Imlav, if however, this person was not an actual Mitzora, but just was locked up as a potential Mitzora, is now getting out, and therefore does not need to actually bring the Karban Asham or the Log of Shemen. So then, Asham Zeh Shalmei Nedava. Then this Asham that's being brought is just a Nedava. It's just being brought as it's brought as a non-required Karban. And therefore, what do you do with that? What do you now have to do with that with that Karban? Right? It might be an Asham Mitzora, and it might just be an Nedava. So what do the Kohanim do with it? Also Asham Ta'an Shchita B'Tzafon. So it has to have Shchita B'Tzafon, which is the Chomer of the Asham. So it has to be treated like the Asham and slaughtered in the north. But also Umatam Bahanos, Usmicho, Nesachim, Mitkunas Chaz V'Shok, V'Nachal Yom V'Layla. But it also has other stringencies. It also has the stringencies of being an Adava. That it has to be some from the Mitzora, where it has to be placed on the thumbs, and you have to do the proper smicha. It has to bring the nesachim with it. You have to wave the chaz and the shok, and it also is limited in the time of eating for only one day and one night. So again, we have a situation now where the karban is being brought. It might be a full-fledged Asham Mitzora. It might just be a Nedava. And therefore, we have to shech this karban and follow the stringencies of both. But what do we see here? We see this, again, there doesn't seem to be a machlokas in this Mishnah. And we see in this Mishnah that one is allowed to bring this karban, even though this animal is now you're going to be potentially limiting it, right? Actually, in this case, it's either way. Whether it's an Asham Mitzora or an Asham Nedava, you're taking certain stringencies from each. So what you're doing is effectively taking a karban that was either an Asham or an Nedava and infusing it with additional stringencies. And so that seems to be going against our Mishnah, which said, Ein Mevin Kachim L'dei Beis Absul. So what would you do? How does this Mishnah fit in? How did this Mishnah fit in with the approach of our Mishnah that said you're not allowed to go ahead and shech these animals in a way that would limit what their availability is for eating and certain things that have to be done with it? Because the Gemara comes and answers 4 lines from the top, on Ayin Vav and Beis. Tikune Gavra Shiny. This case is different because why? We have a person who's really sitting in limbo. And what's the option? This person might be a full-fledged Mitzora and might not be a full-fledged Mitzora. So we have to give him some option to be able to become tahar or move out of his state of suffix. So if we would apply the principle that we are not allowed to limit this karban in any additional way that's not required, you're going to put this person just in a constant state of limbo. They would never be able to get out of their potential mitzvah status. So because we have a person that needs some resolution, so therefore the Rabbana would relax their principle and in this case allow you to bring this karban with the stringencies of an adava and of a asham mitzvah. So now the Gemara goes a little bit on a tangent once we brought down this case. So we talked about what to do with the asham. It's now going to discuss what would happen or what are the parameters of this log of shemen that also needs to be brought. Because again, if this person is a real mitzora, then they also have to bring a log of shemen as part of their karban. And if this person is not, then the log of shemen is obviously not necessary. So 4 lines down. So hatenach asham. So fine. We now worked out what you need to do with that asham karban and how you properly shecht it with the stringencies of both. But log ma'ikal amemar, what do you do with this log of shemen? So the amar log zeh yehin adava. Okay, so the Gemara simply says you take this log and you say if this person is not a mitzora, then they're bringing the log of shemen just as an adava to the base of Mikdash. So the Gemara asks, the Dilma lav mitzorahu uboy mekametz. Okay, that makes sense. So if the person is an actual mitzora, the log of shemen is fine. It's just part of the process. But if not, and now this log of shemen is being brought as an adava, so the adava has different requirements. You have to do kmitza on the log of shemen because the log of shemen has the same requirements as, or it's learned from the karban mincha, which the karban needs to take, right, the komas take a piece of the mincha offering off and burn it. So the same thing, if you're bringing a oil that's an adava, you have to take some of the oil off as the kmitza. So you have to follow that parameter as well. So what does the Gemara say? D'makmitz. Okay, so we take the kmitza. All right, well that's not so simple. V'dilma mitzorahu uvay matan sheva. But okay, so that's fine if you're talking about an adava. But what if it's a log of shemen for mitzora? Then it also needs to have the seven sprinklings. So so we do the 7 sprinklings as well. All right, well then that creates an issue. But now we have another problem. If you go ahead and you take the 7 sprinkles from that oil, now your oil is deficient. It's deficient from what you had before. Let's see the Rashi. Rashi says. Here's the Rashi. The Rashi's later on. Fine. Either way, you're taking off from, when you do the sprinkles, you're taking off from that oil, and now your carbon is short. So what do we say? The maisi purto malile. So we know we go ahead and we add more oil back on, so we fill it back up. So you do the sprinklings and we fill it back up to the appropriate level. The Tanan, chaser halog actually yatzak kimalenu. Because if we, in the case of Nadava, after we take the komets, we have some deficiencies in the oil. What we do is we add more oil in to fill it up. So we're allowed to do that. So we're still we're trying to figure out a way where we can take this log of oil and treat it both for the mitzora if it's needed and for a nadava if that's what it is being. So okay, so now the Gemara has another question. So we're about 8 lines down. Okay, but now we took off the kmitza, right? Because if this was a nadava, that this log is being brought, then we said you have to take a kmitza, you have to take a piece of the oil off and burn it. So now we have to, just taking off that oil is not enough, we have to go ahead and burn it. Okay, doctor. So the Gemara says, all right, we go ahead and burn it. So Gemara asks Amos. All right, well now is where the issue comes up. When exactly are we going to burn the kmitza that we took from this log? So basar matnos sheva. If you go ahead and you want to burn the kmitza after you've already done the 7 applications, now we have an issue. Havele shirayim shechasru ben kmitza lahaktara dein maktirin etzakometz alein. Now we have an issue because we have a principle that if between taking the kmitza and burning the kmitza, some of your leftover, some of your shirayim is removed, the principle is you're no longer allowed to go ahead and burn that kmitza. It has to, all the shirayim has to stay intact until after the kmitza is burned. And if we take the kmitza, that we take the bit of oil, then we go ahead and do the 7 applications, we've now reduced, we've taken off of the shirayim, we can't go ahead and burn the kmitza anymore. Okay, so that's not going to work. We can't go ahead and burn it afterwards. So what's the other option? So instead, let's say, all right, let's go ahead and take the kmitza, burn it, and then want to do these 7 applications. Okay, so what's the problem with that? Sheva. Then we have another issue. Kol shmimenu liishim harehu b'bal saktiro. We have another principle called kol shmimenu liishim harehu b'bal saktiro. So let's see. That we'll see in Rashi. Rashi is second wide line in Rashi. Ikodem matan sheva. So right, we said now what we're doing is we're going to burn the kmitza before we go ahead and take the 7 applications for the mitzvah. So echi matzi lemesav sumine matan sheva. Right? How once we've gone ahead and burned the kmitza, how can we then go ahead and take the sheva? Why nedavahi? Dilma nedavahi. Perhaps this log is actually a nedava. Daktar sakometz haktara, and then the burning of the kmitza is actually required and necessary. And now we're left with the shirayim of the oil after the burning of the kmitza. Then the issue is when we take off from that remaining oil, we have an issue of baltaktiro. V'darshinan be nami lo saktiru kol shemenu isha laHashem yesh bichlal He's a kachim v'shiyarim mincha v'lechem aparim shekarav man. We'll skip down. V'chein hakometz v'chein habazichin kaimei shichem shiram b'vachtei tiru. And we say it applies, more widespread to different types of korbanos. V'hanach hazos b'makam haktara kaimei. That's the key line in Rashi. These hazos of the Metzora are a form of avoda. And once we've taken and burned the komets and we have shirayim, those shirayim cannot go ahead and be used to perform another avoda. They can be used as their regular shirayim, but once the kemitza is burned, you can't go ahead and do an avoda. And if you go ahead and you do the sprinkling for the metzora, you're then taking these and doing an avoda with them after the kemitza has already been brought, and that's going to be an issue of being over on this kol shimenu leishim. And so we're now stuck. What are we going to do with this? When are we going to go ahead and burn the kemitza from the log of Sheben? Because either way, we're having issues working it out, right? We can't do it after because of the issue of kol shimenu leishim, and we couldn't do it before because then we have an issue where when you take the kemitza, you can't have any removal of the shirayim before you go ahead and burn the kemitza. So the issue is, what do we do? So Amar Rav Yehuda, we're 4 lines from the bottom in the Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda, Reis Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, the Masik Lahu, the Shem Eitzim. All right, so here is the pshara. You go ahead and you make a t'nai when you're bringing it. So let's do that. Rashi, the Shem Eitzim. Ta'amar, this is what you say. Ta'amar hachi. Imitzorahu, if this is actually a mitzora. Dein haktara sakometz haktara, and therefore the burning of the kemitza is really nothing because there was no kemitza that was necessary. Kemitza is only required if the log was a nedava, but not required if it's a log from the mitzora. So then, then we don't have a problem because you're taking it from you're doing the hazos from the oil, and there's no issue of shirayim because there was no real komets because it was a mitzora offering. If it's a case where we're not talking about a mitzora, and rather it's the log is a nedava, the aktara saktoma is aktara, and then therefore the burning of the komets actually is something official and is a real burning of the komets. It's a haktara. Yesh menel ishim. And so we would have an issue if we did the sprinklings afterwards. We're worried about the problem of yesh menel ishim, again, of taking the shirayim and using them for an avoda. Then so then you make a t'nai. When you do the sprinklings of the mitzora, you say if this is an actual mitzora, then these are mitzora sprinklings, no problem. If this is really a log that's an edava, then these sprinklings are not an actual avoda. It's just like sprinkling of water. And because you're saying that it's not a true avoda, we don't have an issue of taking shirayim and using them for a further avoda. The Tanya back in the Gemara, the last second to last line. The Tanya, Rabbi Lezer Omer, l'reach nichoach iatamale aval atamale l'shem eitzim. So he said the only issue of bringing the shirayim back onto the mizbech or doing an avoda with them is if it's an actual avoda l'reach nichoach for purposes of being an avoda. But if it's something that's just l'shem eitzim, like they're burning for the wood, or something that's not an avoda purpose, we don't have an issue of using those shirayim. So that's the pshar. That's what we do in this case. We take the komets and burn it right away, and then when we go ahead and do the hazos, we do it with a t'nai that if this log is brought because it's a mitzora, then these are true sprinklings, and it's not a problem because there wasn't really an actual kmitza, so then we don't have an issue that way. And if this was really a log that's an adava, then these sprinklings are nothing to do with the Nei Avoda because there's no actual Matzorah and it's just sprinkling of water on the Mizbech, and that's how we're able to figure out what to do in this case with the log that is brought. Okay. We are now on the top of Ayin Zayin Amid Aleph. Okay, so all right, I guess we're not, I apologize, we're not fully out of the woods. So we thought we figured out the log, we're not fully out of the woods. The Oika Shirayim, we have another issue. Well, Oika Shirayim, Debai Milaino, so if you remember back, what did we say? We said that when we take the we take off the komets, we go ahead and we burn it. Then we go ahead and do the sheva hazos for the mitzora. And the Gemara had asked on Amud Beis and had asked, well, now you're deficient in the shirayim, right? Because we did the sprinkling, so you've lost some of the oil. And what did it say? Okay, add more oil back. All right, great. But what's the issue? That oil you just added back, we never took kmitza from. So we filled in the amount, but kmitza was already taken from the original oil. So now we have some shirayim or some additional oil that was added in that did not have kmitza taken from it. And if we're in a situation where this log is an idava and not a log of a mitzora, you need to have kmitza taken from that, or either that, or you have now something mixed in with already proper nadava oil that has a kmitza taken from it, and now you have other oil that's mixed in that doesn't work. So what do? So you say deparichle. Oh, you go ahead and you are poda that additional piece of oil. And let's see, that Rashi is about 7 lines down where Rashi gets into parichle. But Omer, what do you say? Im eno mitzora. If this is not a logo of a mitzora, and we are stuck with this question where we have shirayim that was, not shirayim, but additional oil that was added in to refill to our previous level. So what do you say? Omer im eno mitzora halug then nedava hare masha hosafti shelo letzorech. And therefore, what I put back on that was not needed, then it is podeh onto this oil. And therefore, that's what we get out of it, we're podeh that extra. All right, so the Gemara asks, back in the Gemara, when exactly are we going to go ahead and do this redeeming? Or, sorry, not when, but where? Where are you going ahead and do this redeeming? Igavai, if you're going to do it when you're still inside of the Beis HaMikdash, then Kamayel chulin la'azara. Well, now we have an issue because now the Kohen has now brought chulin into the azara, because this previously we had added in. It was part of our mixture and had kedusha. But now when we are poda it onto something else, you now have this chulin oil that's now mixed in that's inside the Beis Mikdash. So that's an issue. We're bringing chulin into azara. Iabrai. So okay, fine. So let's take the whole thing out and do it outside. Well, that's a problem because iabrai isfalei biyotze. Then the entire lug is a problem because the lug has is kachim kachim. We bring it outside of Beis Hamikdash to do the poda. So great, that works for the little sliver that we added. But now the entire lug is a problem because we just brought kachim outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So where exactly are we doing this pidyon? So Gemara answers liolam gavai. No, really. You do it on the inside when you're inside the Beis Mikdash. V'chulin memela havyan. And here's the way we get around it. We were worried that you're bringing a problem of bringing chulin inside the Beis Mikdash, but what we have to understand is this is not actively going ahead and bringing any chulin in. The issue is when you take chulin and actually transport it and bring it inside the Beis Mikdash. But what happened here? When it was added inside, it was fine. It was part of the mixture. You went ahead and were podeh it, but when you were podeh it, it became chulin while it was already inside the Beis Hamikdash. It wasn't chulin that was brought in, but rather it was already inside. Then it became chulin. So it's not an active bringing chulin in, which would be the issue, but instead it is something that transformed itself or is transformed into chulin while already inside the Beis Hamikdash, and that's not going to be a problem of actually bringing chulin inside the Beis Hamikdash. So stop here. Got a couple extra minutes for. Wow.